I'll start with the tariffs, and then we can work back from there. The tariffs are sort of the story of the moment.
Yep.
And the Canadians have clapped back on these 25% tariffs. And we had a bit from Trudeau moments ago. And he's saying the American people, he seems, this is very interesting because we also have some other stuff I can play for you, where those who are speaking publicly on this distinguish the American people from their American government. They're all really trying to say, we know you American people are good people, but your government is bad right now. That is pretty much what they've said, almost to the word.
Yeah, I think that was a very smart tactical decision, strategic decision by Justin Trudeau. And addressing Trump directly in his remarks was equally, I thought, a smart move. Donald has some very bizarre beliefs, particularly for someone who has an Ivy League degree in economics. Of course, he didn't earn his degree at Penn. It was given to him. But, he believes that Canada and Mexico and China are going to pay the tariffs. And that's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. He also thinks that any retaliation will be insignificant, won't matter, because Donald creates his own reality. And Donald is at heart really a mercantilist, or mercantilist, if you prefer that. Prior to Adam Smith figuring out market economics in 1776 in his book, Wealth of Nations, still in print, by the way, the world believed that if you had a piece of gold, Mark, and I want it, there's only one way to get it, because there's no additional wealth. There's just a fixed amount of wealth. And so I need to take your gold. So the British would attack Spanish galleons and steal their gold. Our Constitution provides for pirates, letters of marque, M-A-R-Q-U-E, so that we can go after and grab wealth. And of course, now we're very good at creating wealth. We're not very good at distributing wealth, but we're very good at creating wealth. Donald doesn't get that. And you cannot persuade him of anything he does not want to believe. So we're going to end up with this trade war. Well, you're seeing the stock market is beginning to fall. Interest rates will at some point go up. They may go up down in the short run, but they're going to have to go up as this continues. People are going to lose their jobs. A number of businesses. One of my sons, who's owns his own retail store, he buys lots of goods that come from China, and he thinks this will just wipe him out.
Tony, play for us I guess he's like the equivalent of a governor of the, was it Ontario?
Premier. He's the premier of Ontario.
Thank you. But isn't that the equivalent of a
yes,
governor or senator?
Yes, it's a Canadian term for governor. The difference is that in the United States, we have a co-equal system where the states and the federal government are equal, except where the Constitution has supremacy for the federal government. In Canada, the provinces are subordinate to the national government.
I see. Okay. So essentially, he's the governor of this province, and against that backdrop, here he is, just with his remarks on the tariffs. Go ahead, please.
What are your plans, and how far are you willing to take it?
Well, first of all, I have to tell you, Canadians love Americans. We love the U.S. It's one person that's causing these problems. I've talked to senators and congresspeople and governors, Republicans and Democrats. Not one of them agree with them. I've talked to business CEOs of the largest companies. They totally disagree with this. And President Trump ran on a mandate to lower costs, to create more jobs. This is going to do exactly the opposite. The auto sector, we buy over 400% more autos than Mexico, 200% more than anywhere in the world. And, he put up a smokescreen, he keeps moving the goalposts. Well, the market is speaking loud and clear. The market is going to go downhill faster than the American bobsled team. And we're going to continue seeing in the U.S. plants close, assembly lines shut down. In the auto sector, they may last 5, maybe 8 days before the parts that go back and forth across the border 8 times. This is unnecessary, and we do have to retaliate. And I apologize to the American people. It's not you. It's your president that's causing this problem. We're the #1 customer in the world to the United States. We had a great relationship. I want to continue on with that relationship, but I will use every tool in our toolbox to send a message to President Trump that this is the wrong thing to do.
So there it is, David.
Yeah, and Doug Ford did a terrific job there of explaining this. The province of Ontario controls the sale of liquor very tightly. It's not like California where you have all sorts of private liquor stores. And they've stopped buying Kentucky bourbon, and they've been quite upfront of aiming this at Mitch McConnell. And, you know, one of the most important things in this tariff deal with Mexico and Canada is Trump said not long ago, this is a terrible trade rule. I mean, who did this? Donald Trump did this. He redid NAFTA. This is his own plan that he's attacking. And I honestly think Donald doesn't understand he's attacking his own plan.
I know one thing: no one is going to tell him. It's remarkable the sycophants that of he's now. There are no quote adults in the room, right? I mean, he's just you know.
Well, I've taken to calling him the Quisling Republicans, and for those who may not know, Quisling was the Norwegian collaborator who was prime minister there after the Nazi occupation. I was, by the time I was in first grade, and I think maybe kindergarten, my Norwegian grandmother made sure I knew that name and what a Quisling was. And that's what they are. They are collaborating in the destruction of American liberties. Oh, good, a picture of Quisling up. American liberties and the American economy. And I've been doing a lot of overseas TV, and I'm just flabbergasted at how everybody else in the world understands what Trump is doing economically is just bat crap crazy.
Right.
But not the Republican Quislings on Capitol Hill.
I mean, it's interesting. The Quisling thing is interesting because I think there's a sense of appeasement. I don't know how much is collaboration and how much of it is appeasement and how much of it is you know just standing there or sitting there silently. I mean, there's I think an understanding in Washington on the right that these aren't smart moves, but these are the moves to retain power. There's a lot, you know this better than anyone, that there's a lot of the 3D chess of power that's going on in Washington.
Sure. Well, first of all, global diplomacy is an incredibly complex and subtle game of people who want to go to work for the State Department. Only 3% of people make it through to get hired. I mean, it's really rigorous and tough to get in. And even if you want to get in the back door by being having diplomatic status, but you're with, say, the Agency for International Development that's been shut down by Trump, it's still very tough to get in there. And Donald is simply pursuing his own fundamental beliefs. So the United States of America has stood steadily for democracy and liberty from day one. Now we are aligned with a murderous dictator against democracy and liberty. And we see in Donald Trump someone who very much creates his own reality. And if you don't understand that, you can't understand his behavior. As for the Republicans who won't stand up to him, at some point, some of them will. They're going to get voted out of office if they don't, as things go downhill. But, you know, more than 1 million people died for this country. My father was a 100% disabled veteran of World War II, whom I watched as I was a boy growing up slowly die. Fortunately, he hung on till I was just turned 20 years old. But it was miserable. And he never complained. He felt he had done his duty for his country. But to behave like Donald Trump does, to go around now cutting veterans' affairs, to call soldiers who are disabled, disfigured especially, or killed losers and suckers. This is despicable conduct. And if you're listening to the show and you're a MAGA, you're not an American. You're an enemy of America if you believe it's okay to attack our soldiers and sailors and airmen.
Yeah, these are things that I would have thought might have derailed his momentum early on. I mean, he's been doing this since the first go around. So, you know, I wanted, because you alluded to it, take you to this Oval Office throwdown that happened between Zelensky and Trump. And it seemed as though actually it started, and I played some of the stuff for us last week. It started very graciously. I mean, there was thanks, and, you know, you don't see that played back now in the media, but the reality was that Zelensky was quite gracious and thankful at the beginning. And then it reached kind of a hot spot. And then J.D. Vance made sure that it really ran into a ditch. And then they just beat up on
Mark,
him.
I really think I've gone back and very carefully rewatched the entire video several times. This was a planned ambush of Zelensky. First of all, Vance says, why aren't you wearing a suit? Well, I'm sorry, Elon Musk, who brought his child to the Oval Office, didn't wear a suit. So where's the criticism of him?
I made that same point. It was so funny coming from those guys.
And if Zelensky owes thanks, it's not to this administration, it's to the Biden administration. They're the ones who really put us behind. Donald lied flat out. He continues to lie by saying $350 million and saying it in a way that implies we gave them that kind of cash. And there are people around Trump who say Zelensky's totally corrupt. He stole all the money, which is absurd. It's $120 billion, and it's an American jobs program. Everything we send over there, the bullets, the guns, the airplanes, the helicopters, those were built by Americans in American factories. And so the other key element in that meeting is how Marco Rubio just sat there like he was disembodied. Marco Rubio, who was on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, he knows better than what was going on here. And Donald's points were Russian talking points. He said that the war was started by Zelensky. Now, on the overseas TV, I've been kind of surprised by people who go, well, Zelensky forced the war on Russia because he wanted to join NATO. I'm sorry, wanting to join NATO is grounds for this bloody war? Wow, where is your sense of proportionality about things? And then Donald...
by the way, just that point is very much articulated and has been by the far left. That my friends who are on really like the way far left, where it's so far left it starts to be right, they've been articulating that all the expansion of NATO. This is the inevitable outgrowth of that. This is the argument.
Right, and of course, there's no indication anywhere that NATO has ever been anything but a defensive organization, not an aggressive organization. Then there's one other element to this, which is Donald, as he always does, went to the transaction, to money. I mean, imagine if after World War II, President Truman had said, by the way, we saved you, Britain, you're going to pay us damages. Hey, the French, you better pay us a lot of money because we saved you. We didn't do that. We put much more money into Germany, but we rebuilt Germany and Japan and turned them into modern democratic societies because that was the right thing to do. Donald doesn't believe in the right thing to do. He believes in might makes right. So this demand for war, and apparently Zelensky is about to sign the contract to give half the mineral rights to the most valuable, some of them rare earths, materials to the United States. First of all, I don't trust that there's that kind of wealth there. The maps that were used to find and document the deposits of various minerals were from 1950s Soviet geologists. That was a society where you had to produce what was wanted by the dictator at the moment in the Kremlin. It wasn't based on honest scientific research, which is under severe attack in this country right now by the Trumpers. And furthermore, most of that wealth is in areas, not most of it, but a significant share of that wealth is in the areas the Russians are controlling. So that's further troubling about all this. American companies I don't think American companies are going to get the kind of money out of this that Donald Trump thinks, and it will take years and years and years for that to happen. You don't open a mine, even an open pit mine, in 60 days.
I don't know that he won't find some way to declare victory. I think he just wants to be able to, say, see, I stopped the war, and he'll spin it in his own way.
Oh, yeah.
Even though it's a total capitulation. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I wanted to give you a couple of comments from, look at this. Tammy says, DCJ, love your colors today.
Closest I could get. My wife has the exact right colors. I don't. I don't know if you've seen the picture of the Eiffel Tower after that Oval Office meeting. The French, because they have all that nuclear energy, they have to get out of the building 24 hours a day. That's why Paris is all full of lights. They lit it up in Ukrainian colors.
No, I did not see that. That's terrific. We'll get that. We'll get that pic. D. Elliott, none of Trudeau's comments will air on the blood red right-wing sites.
They won't. And my daughter, Amy, who does research for me, she was citing to me what she was finding at OAN and Breitbart and other places. And when she got done, she said, if I followed these news services, I would have no idea of what's actually going on in the world that matters. And that's exactly right. They just avoid things that would be troublesome for them to get across, partly as a strategy to minimize the amount of time they spend lying. And they do a lot of outright lying at Fox. I mean, Fox had to pay $787.5 million in damages for lying, and they've still got a lawsuit against them for $2 billion for the same thing.
Yeah, yeah. Karen Cooper says NATO was formed to protect countries from Russia. That's really true. Yeah.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Now, Donald's appeasement here, that's what Donald is doing, is appeasement.
Right.
Which I don't believe will work. A couple things, Mark, to keep in mind about this. We have degraded Russia's military so seriously that he's using donkey carts to get supplies to the front. And they're defending this in Russia, that all armies have always used donkey carts. It may be true in the distant past. We used to also have, cavalry that actually rode horses instead of mechanized equipment. Secondly, when Neville Chamberlain appeased Hitler over the Sudetenland, Czechoslovakia capture, it wasn't his intent, but he ended up giving Britain a year of time to get ready to defend itself against Hitler. It wasn't what he set out to do, but it was the effect of that. But in Donald's case, why would we appease this murderous aggressor who's violating his own country's treaty by this war? We're not in any danger. We have a military that if we had to go toe-to-toe with them, probably end up with nuclear weapons, but any ground battle, we would just overrun them in 2 seconds. He has a Potemkin army, and it's badly defeated. And soldiers who are being captured by the Ukrainians are telling their interrogators, who don't have to torture them to get information out of them, they're telling them that they were shown how to take a gun apart, clean it, and how to fire it and sent to the front. That's the level of training they got. No wonder between 1,000 and 1,600 Russian and North Korean soldiers are dying every day. And for comparison, in World War II, when we were fighting in both the Pacific and Europe, we lost 300 soldiers a day to death. They're losing multiples of that, and Putin doesn't care. You and I, we're just objects, just like Donald sees us. We're just objects. We're not human beings. There's no compassion.
And it's against that backdrop that I find the appeasement and the capitulation perplexing, because in other words, I said the other day, either Trump doesn't know or doesn't, either there's compromise or there's some definite transactional thing, because based on everything you've written, there's always money in it somehow. There's some for Trump, but it's either, but otherwise, I don't understand why you are appeasing a weakened Putin. And as you say, I mean, you can even argue that he's losing this war. I mean, with the continued flow of American arms, he'd be losing this war.
If Biden had not been so incremental in slowly providing weaponry, if he had said right at the beginning, we're not going to allow this, and we're going to give you F-16 fighters and everything else, this war would have been over a long time ago. And Biden, unfortunately, had this incrementalist approach, and I spoke out about it at the time. I thought it was a major strategic error. Their fear was that it would lead to a larger war and perhaps nuclear weapons. And I think that was a reasonable judgment, but I think it was wrong. If I can get you off this, there are 2 other things I think are real important.
Absolutely. And then I want to get to a couple other questions. Go ahead.
The commissioner of Social Security, former governor of Maryland, who was just forced to resign, Social Security is headquartered in Baltimore, told CNBC yesterday that what they're doing, Musk's teenagers and 20-somethings to Social Security, will cause the collapse of the system. He predicted within 30 to 90 days, so 1 to 3 months. Now think about that for a minute. So if he's right, Social Security payments stop going out or they become erratic. I don't get my check, but My next door neighbor, who's my age, gets a check for $16 million. They will use that as an excuse to hire private contractors to go back and fix the system if that's what they want to do. And indeed, Elon Musk got rid of the people who maintain the Federal Aviation Administration air navigation maps, which are crucial to air travel. And now he's trying to get a contract for the $2 billion cost of that. So this is sheer corrupt crony capitalism. But also, if the payments stop, don't be surprised. I'm not predicting this. I'm just saying don't be surprised if someone around Trump, probably Elon Musk, possibly J.D. Vance, goes, well, you know, it's a Ponzi scheme. We can't afford the Social Security payments, so we need to stop the government spending more than it's taking in. And sorry, you're not going to get your money, or you're only going to get half your money. Now, if they do that, if they're dumb enough to do that, I think there'll be a massive reaction, and you'll see a change in Congress, which is why I think they won't do it. But I think if they do mess this up so that checks don't go out as expected to people, and remember, a lot of old people would be in poverty by the government standards, which are extremely low standards, if it wasn't for their Social Security check. If I don't get my Social Security check, I'll survive. But that's not true for about 90% of people who are 65 and older, and people who are disabled.
Sure. Social Security does a lot more than just to handle retirement.
Right.
I made the point yesterday about Social, because he actually did say, Elon Musk did on Rogan's show, that it was a Ponzi scheme. He said all of government's a Ponzi scheme, and and the biggest Ponzi scheme is Social Security. If you can go back, those who were just tuning in, I said it yesterday, and I did a riff essentially on the fact that if you're really serious about solvency, whatever, it's always used as the key word to kind of try to get rid of something. But if you're really worried about it, raise the cap. I mean, it's that simple. Raise the cap on Social Security.
In fact, at DC Report, I wrote about how if we did the same thing we did with Medicare, the Medicare tax, 1.45% of your pay plus 1.45% that comes from your employer, which is just money you earn that's taxed away at a 100% rate. If we took the cap off, Social Security would be rolling in dough. We could raise benefits significantly. And now that we have hundreds of people every year whose pay for their labor is north of $100 million a year, it's not unreasonable to do that. Biden was in the trap that he couldn't do anything from the cap, which when he left office was about $170,000 up to $400, because he said nobody would have a higher tax bill at $400. But the solution to Social Security, there's two factors at work. One is lift the cap. The second one, we have a piece at DC Report by one of the most important economists in the world, Stephanie Kelton, who points out that the reason Social Security doesn't have as much money as was projected in the past coming in right now is people like Elon Musk. You know, he wants a 46 or 45 billion dollar paycheck from his companies that's being fought in the courts, and we've been holding down wages. If wage growth was normal, Social Security would be lush with money.
Yeah, I just see so many easy solutions, and yet, wow, what you just painted as a potential picture for the privatization, and they definitely want to privatize everything, so they would love that opportunity. That's a scary picture. This from Depressed Canadian, who says there's an understandable impulse for voters to look toward the midterms with hope of some inevitable Dem victory, but can David K. Johnston comment on the GOP controlling the USPS as a way to manipulate mail-in ballots?
Well, Donald, has this bizarre belief that mail-in ballots are somehow inherently corrupt. And if you haven't counted the ballots by midnight, then you should stop counting. Of course, that's always when he's losing that he holds that position. Clearly, there's an effort here to destroy, I think, outright the Postal Service. Joe Biden kept Donald Trump's appointee at the Postal Service. The Postal Service is not required under our Constitution. It is authorized, but it is not required. And of course, on the far right, we've had people like the Cato Institute and others long saying, well, we should privatize all of this. The reason we have a Postal Service is universal coverage. if you live in a rural area, whether it's rural California or Keapaha County, the least populated county in America, in Nebraska, western Nebraska, you have mail delivery every day because we make that a universal value. And if we go to a privatized system, I won't have any trouble getting my mail. I might get it 2 times a day if it's in the interest of the provider, because I live 5 blocks outside of a substantial city. But don't count on that, and especially if you're the Coachella coffee company. They're far enough out there, they might only be able to get pickups 3 times a week. This whole privatization thing, there's lots of evidence that in general it does not improve things. It was especially true in the case of taking over water utilities. I wrote in either the Free Lunch or the Fine Print about water companies like in Felton, just outside of Santa Cruz, where I grew up, and how you can lower rates significantly if you have municipal or public water. But if you privatize it, rates go through the roof. And of course, the buyers need to have a profit margin to justify their investment, which inherently raises prices unless they're more efficient. There's no great efficiencies to be found through privatization in water systems, in mail delivery. Those are mature, well-studied industries.
I also see the ways in which the Eric Princes of the world are going to move into all of these different areas of government that are being dismantled. It's really an opportunity to, as you say, I mean, it's 2 moves. It's getting rid of or interrupting Social Security services, and then offering a solution by privatization. That same dance can be done over and over across government as they continue to dismantle it.
Well, I keep getting mail, by the way, from Donald, emails about trying to persuade people that we can get rid of the income tax, that the tariffs will allow us to get rid of the income tax. We ran the country largely on tariffs in the 18th and the first half, certainly, of the 19th centuries. We also had virtually no government. I mean, in the beginning, the only court in the U.S., federal court, was the Supreme Court, and the judges also on horseback went around and held trials. The world is much more complicated now. And if you look at the countries around the world that are wealthy, there's one consistent thing that separates wealthy countries from poor ones. They have substantial taxes, and those taxes fall more and more heavily on your income as you go up the income ladder, because providing the resources to grow private wealth through businesses requires enormous investments in public resources. Education, we've been stripping education of money in this country to the point now where more than half of American adults are reading below 6th grade level, or right at the edge of 6th grade level. We've been stripping money from properly taking care of roads. So we have a much more robust business in front-end alignments and replacing tires than we need to have. If you go to Stockholm, where the weather is terrible, much more like Rochester than where you are in LA, you don't find any potholes, and cars look better and last better. And so if we underinvest in the public sector, and then on top of that, we raid the Treasury to give money to companies. I mean, just everyone listening, in 2010, the numbers were true then, they're worse now. In 2010, just state and local giveaways to big companies like General Electric and Rupert Murdoch's Fox and Motorola, Ford, and a lot of foreign companies, Mitsubishi, those companies overall got subsidies from state and local governments equal to more than a week's gross pay for the median full-time worker in America. And, think about that. You work 1 week a year just to give money to these big profit-making companies, to Walmart and Lowe's and Home Depot. 1 week a year for that. That doesn't count the federal subsidies. So, and all this has happened because people I don't want to talk about taxes. I don't want to think about, I don't want to do anything with politics. Well, guess what? When you don't do that and you don't educate yourself and you don't vote in line with your interests, the people who make money off government they're the ones who are laughing all the way to the bank.
That's so well said. Look, we have to wrap up, but I wanted to indicate to you, I'm on now some of these mailing lists too, and I don't know if you got this. Please sign your enclosed birthday card for Melania Trump. Okay, and there's a birthday card.
And how much
of
money
Melania.
do you send with your birthday card?
Exactly. Well, they gave me several options, David. I've $15 is where it starts, 25, 50, or more. So they start with, these are kind of lower numbers. I've also received another one that started with $28. And I mentioned everybody because I shared it. It goes 28, 50, 100, 150. Why do they start at $28? It's such an odd number.
Well, because they've got some kind of research that suggests that's a good number. Why do so many charities on TV ask for $19? I wrote about that in the Kiplinger retirement report. I thought it was because of something called the $250 charity rule. It's not. It's because research shows that $19 people are more likely to give to, help starving dogs and other causes.
Right.
But Donald sends these pitches every day. I got one today that there's a contest, and I and a second person can get airfare to go to have dinner at Mar-a-Lago with Donald. Well, first of all, I've never seen any evidence that they pay off in these things. But if there's anybody listening who's a lawyer or regulator, I thought when companies run contests, like, on the back of cereal boxes, they can't require you to pay money to be part of the contest, or it's illegal gambling. Now, maybe the law changed and I missed that. But if anybody knows, email me. It's easy to find my email. You can go to rit.edu and get my page, and it'll have my email, and you can send me an email at the university. But I really would like to know, because I suspect that this is an illegal scheme. Of course, Donald doesn't have to worry about it if it's a federal crime, because his corrupt Attorney General, Pam Bondi, who's an absolute lapdog for him and an attack dog for him, she's the one who would have to approve any action.
Oh, God, just don't remind me. All right. David, again, dcreport.org. David co-founded that website. It's still the great resource for so much. There is the Eiffel Tower lit up in those colors.
And Mark, one thing before I go, in a day or two at DC Report, we're going to have a short story up by me. There's something hilariously wrong in Donald Trump's tariff on Canada. It's just a beautiful indication of how uninformed and ignorant he and the people around him are. Dug up by a friend of mine in Oregon, and I don't think I'll be able to get it out today, and tomorrow I have to give midterms. But by the end of the week, we'll have a story up about it. And it's short, but it's one of those, they really don't know what they're doing.
It's nice to laugh about it, but it's all sad, sadly.
Yep. At the end of the day.
We will talk next week. Thank you, David. Appreciate it.
Take
David
care.
K. Johnston. Yeah.
Take care, Mark.
Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.